It is fancy.
Yeah, it is.
I guess we're live. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us to do this office hours for the CFP. We saw there was like a few questions that people have had on the CFP over the past couple of weeks, and we just thought we can just have a live questions and answers with Valentin here, who's the program chair, I think, for 2017 and 2018, correct?
Yes.
And then you're responsible for the proceedings. So also if we have any questions on the proceedings, Valentin can answer them, I think. And then Lyndon was you were the co-chair for 1 year and then the scheduling chair, but you were very involved with the proposals as well, and you have a lot of background.
Chris and I were a team for the last 2 years, so yeah.
You and Chris, yes. So we are, let's start answering your question.
And of course, Huda here is the chair for this year.
Correct. Thank you for introducing me. Forget to introduce myself. Anyway, yes, so we're going to be using the Pigeonhole platform to take questions, just so that we see the ones that we've answered and check them off the list. And then questions can be upvoted on the platform as well, and we can see the most popular questions and we can answer those. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and answer the one on Pigeonhole that shows up on the expected duration for experiences, which is a new track. I've seen that a lot of people have asked about this track before, so I'm just gonna explain it kind of briefly. The main idea is whoever has had experience with Julia in the past but doesn't have something like extremely concrete to come and show us, this is the place for them to go. Traditionally, in previous JuliaCons, or like when the language was much younger, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, what used to happen is people could show these experiences or these types of experiences in possibly lightning talks. I think it used to happen. But the thing is, like, as the language grew bigger and more people are using, the entry point to come to JuliaCon has become possibly more complex. Like, everyone wants to just like the most like mature products that they have, and we don't necessarily just want to see the most mature stuff. We also want to see anything you're working on or excited about, and you would like to share how Julia has showed up in your pipeline, whether it's for classes, projects, research, any type of, or industry, or any type of project you're using Julia for, but you don't have the most mature product. That's the place to go. And then the duration, yes, it's 3 minutes, and it has to be recorded ahead of time. So make sure, to have at most 3 minutes for those types of talks. And I think in the announcement we say it would be great if you actually have some sort of kind of contact information about you in that deck of slides when you're sharing them, because there won't be any Q&A time. But if you leave any type of information about you for people to be able to reach out to you if they need to, or if there's like anything you said that was relevant to someone else and it might trigger some sort of collaboration or something, that would be the place to also provide your contact information. And that way it can trigger future collaboration. So there won't be Q&A for those types of talks.
Then do you want to answer the question about the deadline extension?
Sure, yeah. So for the deadline extension, the deadline has already been extended till the end of March 31st. So we gave a 1 week and 1 day extension. So just because like we thought it was gonna extend it for a week, and then we remembered it's March 30, so we thought maybe just do it March 31st. So yeah, it will be anywhere on Earth. I don't remember the exact time, but I think it's 7 a.m. Eastern time. So end of day, March 31st is the deadline, and that's the final extension. It won't be extended anymore.
For people who aren't aware, JuliaCon traditionally gives an extension. This is not like, oh no, we've got no talks, have to do an extension. This is oh, well, we've given an extension for the last 4 years. Some people are counting on us giving an extension. So if we don't, they're going to be inconvenienced.
We didn't give an extension in 2018 because we were like, we already have 250, 300 plus proposals. And so instead of making the announcement that we're going to offer an extension, I had to make an announcement that we're not going to offer an extension.
People were mad. They were not happy.
People were mad. People were furious.
Yeah, so I was actually, when we first decided on this deadline, as I was thinking, I was like, we're not going to do extension this year. Let's just do it the right way. Just do the deadline and so on. And everyone on the committee was like, no, everyone's expecting an extension. So, yes. So there's that. Yeah, it's not that we don't have talks and so on. It's exactly what Linda just said. Everyone seems to expect the 1 week extension. So it's
everyone
happening.
in academia is used to this. And so they get very upset if they don't have their extension. As an academic, I can emphasize. Is it compulsory to share the code related to the work you have done with Julia? We strongly encourage that, I would say. We understand that there are industry applications and you are not might not be in a position to share the code. But yeah, in general, we strongly encourage that as an open source community.
More broadly, when it comes to things being reviewed, it tends to be that talks that don't have real code attached to them have a lot harder time. Like reviewers are much harsher on a talk proposal. If they're like, well, it sounds interesting, but there's no code. Are you just completely making this thing up? So it's definitely like a strong plus for trying to get your talk accepted. Or you need to do really well if you can't do it.
And we try not to have advertisement talks. So talks where you just purely advertise a service or something your company builds that even if it's within the space of Julia, maybe there's a different venue you can share that. But for the big talks, for the highlights, it's important that everybody then can go out after the talk and be like, oh yeah, I really want to play with this. How can I get my hands on?
Right. I mean, if you do want to actually talk about a thing you've made in Julia that you're selling, etc., this is exactly the role of a sponsorship talk. And JuliaCon would love you to sponsor and enjoy a sponsorship talk.
Yeah, I agree with everything Lyndon and Valentin said. I would just add one tiny thing. As you saw already, it's per se, yes, it's not compulsory, but it would be a huge plus. But the catch there, if you think you can't, for some reason, some industry reason or anything like that, you can't really share the code publicly, there's a description box in the proposal where you can share this type of information with us to say why you can't share this link publicly or so on. Just this will be internal, only the reviewers will see it, versus the abstract will be a public paragraph that will be shown to everyone. So if there's a reason you're not sharing code, I think it would be very helpful in the review process to not give harsh, to just be able for us to understand that this exists. There's a reason it's not being shown to the public. So make use of the description box, I would say.
I think this is the notes box. I think the description box is public. It's marked in the submission form which one is public and which one is the reviewers only.
Right, yes. I can comment on the virtual posters quickly. And Lyndon, if you have experience from the previous year with virtual posters, feel free to share that also. So for virtual posters, it was slightly different this year because we knew we were planning JuliaCon as we're going, we knew it was going to be live, versus last year it was a general call for proposals. And then halfway through, we decided it was going to be an online conference. So for this year, we thought it might be just, it would save everyone time to just have the person presenting the poster just record a 3-minute presentation ahead of time, in the sense that they won't have to repeat the entire presentation every single time a new person joins the room or joins the poster. Imagine it in the physical sense. So they would record it ahead of time. And now everyone who wants to join the conversation for the poster conversation, they can just click on the link, watch it, and then join in the room. That way, it would just save the person presenting the poster to like kind of repeat this thing over and over throughout the conversation. And whoever is in the room must have heard it already a couple times, and like the person in the room might also feel uninterested at some point. So we thought it might be the most optimal way, like have it pinned to the channel. Whoever's going to join will watch and then join the conversation. I don't know if you want to comment on how it was last year, London.
My recollection of last year was there wasn't a formal talk, but informally each post session ended up with organizing a stream of live talks going on at the same time. In general, it's a limitation of our scheduling software that anything that needs to go through review has to have at least a few minutes of duration, or we can't use the review software. But yeah, if this is an actual talk, so it's an actual, sure.
Also, it's great to have those things recorded so that people can watch them afterwards, right? Being online is just a lot more asynchronous than in person. And
Valentin, I see a proceedings question if you want to answer it.
Yes. So with regards to the question is, how much scientific novelty is expected for submission to the proceedings? Is it enough to be a Julia implementation of a certain algorithm or technique? In general, the JuliaCon proceedings are not novelty focused. So we accept publications that are solid. So we have two different forms of publication. One of them is an extended abstract style format, and the other one is 6 to 8 pages of scholarly writing. And the abstract publication very much is in the style of what you might know from the Journal of Open Source Software, whereas the 6 to 8 pages is much more in depth. While your technique might not, or the algorithm might not need to be novel, if you go for a longer paper, you should go in detail about what makes the implementation in Julia work, why is it interesting, what are the secrets of actually making it work. So, but yeah, you don't need to show novelty in your respective field.
There's a question on what if your work is still in work in progress and you don't want to publish your package yet. Does any of you have thoughts on that?
That's tricky. This falls under the what Lyndon talked earlier about vaporware. So we had talk submissions that sounded great and feel great, but there's a question of, can you actually execute on this? And right, it's now March, and yeah, you have another 3 months to writing code. But we've also had cases in prior JuliaCons where people submitted something and then 2 weeks before realized that they needed to talk about it, and then didn't quite have ready implementation for JuliaCon. And so, yeah, it's. Lyndon, do you have anything more?
There is a phrase called conference-driven development, where you submit the thing you want to make, and then you know you're going to have it done in time because, well, you've got to. You've got a conference to present to that. The talk's been accepted. JuliaCon doesn't have a rule against conference-driven development. Other conferences, I think SciPy might have a specific rule saying that we will not accept talks that are, and they use the actual phrase, conference-driven development. It needs to be a thing that actually exists right now at time of submission. But like I said, like if there are no code to see, the reviewers tend to look at that very harshly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. As a rule, I would try to publish something, even if it is a thing, which is like, here's my package. It has one of the 5 features that I said I'm going to have. And in the talk notes, say something like, the package code, here it is. Note that it implements only this. However, we expect to have these other things implemented by this time, and this is why we believe we can get it done on time. But yeah, I'm a big fan of like doing everything in the open. I have all kinds of terribly broken, incomplete packages that I never actually published in like the registry, but the source code's open, and reviewers, if you can see the source, that's kind of enough to satisfy a lot of people.
Yeah, again, agreed with everything you just said. I would just add, still submit the proposal, but maybe I think this rule, conference-driven development, like I think eventually if we have too many problems with this situation, we will have to add something like that. So I would just say, don't be the person who triggers such a comment. Like just, I think it's fine to be working on something like ongoing. So I just go ahead and submit the proposal. But yeah, just make sure to actually have the content ready before the conference.
I think both Lyndon and I have done conference-driven development in the past, or at least being like, oh, we need to polish this so that we can actually talk about it. Which is like a great motivator of actually getting user-facing improvements and making sure, hey, I'm announcing this package. I want to make sure that people actually have a good time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's no problem with that.
Yeah,
yes.
No. What is the stance on presenting Julia software that is completely unrelated to any scientific or academic fields? Completely fine, no worries. We don't require relevance in an academic field. If it's cool Julia software, we want to see it.
Yeah, something like http.jl or I don't know, aws.jl. Those would be like great things to see at JuliaCon. I think probably both have been presented. I think a lot of the beauty of Julia in the first place is the fact that we do have a general purpose language, and then you're like in the middle of doing yourself a science, you're like, oh, I need to like upload some data onto a web server. Like these non-scientific software are like incredibly useful for scientific applications, and but regardless, JuliaCon isn't actually a like scientific conference.
Exactly. And we had presentations about web scraping before, and like, yeah, everything. You want to hear about it.
Yeah. Sorry, Valentin, you cut off for a second.
Oh, no worries. I was just saying that that we are enthused about everything.
Yeah, anything Julia related is something we would love to hear about it.
Is it possible to fix small details of the proposals after they are accepted? Yes, up to a point.
That point is really late. That point is like within like maybe a week or two before the conference itself, potentially during the conference itself, but like no promises there.
Yeah, and also the changes, like don't change an entire abstract to like now say something else. Like the changes have to be very minor as well. But the gist of the abstract should remain the same.
But particularly with things being online, there's not stuff like, oh, we need to get the books printed a month beforehand, so things need to go to the copy shop, etc.
I see there's something upvoted. It's not a question, but I would just say it out loud in case anyone is listening and is interested. Request for JuliaCon 2021 tutorial. Please create a minimal C++ minimal tutorial for integrating third-party libraries. My problem, there are a lot of C++ libraries without Julia wrappers. So I actually think there was a workshop about that last year, if I'm not mistaken.
It feels like something we had, but also like if somebody wants to give that workshop or talk, that would be fantastic.
Exactly. So shout out to anyone who wants to submit a proposal on that. Seems like there's already audience for it. And that's a great idea to submit a proposal on.
I think last year's workshops weren't recorded because they weren't in a format for recording. So I do think there was one last year about this, but because it's a workshop and so it's interactive and very long, you may not be able to find it.
I'll try to find the link right now, but we'll see. I do think they were recorded, if I'm remembering correctly. But anyway,
Okay, cool.
the point is, there might be some content online. We'll just need to find it. I'm pretty bad with multitasking, so if I find it now, I'll share it. If not, I'm sure it's somewhere online, or I'm not sure it's somewhere online. Hopefully it's somewhere online.
I think it was CXX Wrap. I think it was a talk
Right.
about CXX Wrap.
Yes, that's
or
what
like
I'm
a workshop.
correct. And now the only caveat is, was it recorded or not? I guess.
I just put it in the chat, Huda. It was recorded.
Oh, it was recorded.
Regarding the 25-minute talks, if the code is regarding a scientific application, is it fine to talk like 10 to 15 minutes about the scientific background and only a subpart on the implementation itself? Yes, but keep in mind you are talking to a general purpose audience. So if you go too deep into the scientific part, you might lose people very rapidly. So talk about why your problem is hard, why your problem is cool. You don't need to explain the entirety of the field to us. You just need to tell us why we care in some ways. And then tell us about the cool thing you're doing with Julia.
I would lean more towards 10 minutes than 15.
Yeah.
And I guess also it's like the implementation itself. Lots of talks don't really talk about the implementation itself in terms of, they don't say, oh, we've got an object for this and a overloaded get property here. And the more interesting stuff in many cases is the what can you do with it? And to explain what you can do with it does involve talking a lot about the scientific background or whatever else it's for.
Yeah. What can you do with it, or what is the cool thing? How you're doing it?
Yep.
There's a question on whether to submit a 25-minute talk or a lightning talk. It sounds like lightning talks has a higher chance of being accepted. I don't know. I think that's tricky without knowing the content. I don't know.
So as a rule, the cutoff, we're able to present more lightning talks than talks. So the cutoff for talks, for lightning talks, tends to be slightly lower than for talks because we can have more of them. And then the second factor there is if you submit a talk and people think, oh, it's really good, but it's just not quite good enough for it to like get a full talk. It's very common for talks to be offered a lightning talk instead. With that said, if there was a talk that scored, say, 3.5 and a lightning talk that also scored 3.5, and we're like, well, we'll downgrade this talk to a lightning talk, would we accept it then? We're going to choose the one that was originally submitted as a lightning talk in preference over a talk that we're downgrading, since that's what it was originally prepared for. Yeah. But yeah, I would say if in doubt, lean towards talk, but...
Yeah, I think I've also noticed in the past that people submit talks by default. And as a reviewer, it becomes hard to judge whether or not that is actually something I would like to listen to for 30 minutes. But then I see a lightning talk proposal and I go like, oh yeah, absolutely, 10 minutes about this, perfect.
Yeah.
Is there a publication fee for the 6 to 8 pages paper? No, there is not. We gladly have the support of NumFocus and the Journal of Open Source, or the open journals, and there is no publication fee.
There's a question on the virtual posters versus experiences. Yes, the virtual posters are more of a technical, like just imagine the traditional way of thinking about posters where you have everything on the poster. Even your presentation, to be honest, it can actually be a like a format of a poster and just go over it in 3 minutes or so. And then for
perhaps
the sorry, go ahead.
Just for people who haven't done a poster in the academic setting before, it might be worth talking a bit more about them. I know not all fields and not all people do posters in the first place. Sorry,
I missed what you said for a second. You said to talk more about what posters are.
What a poster is in the first place.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sure like you're familiar with them because your field use posters.
Yeah. So for like the way I view a poster is like really just you have you present your like in a research setting or a scientific research setting. You basically have just like a big board where you paste your physical and pre-COVID where you paste your physical big printout of a poster in a sense that you go over like problem definition or like what is the solution you're proposing and maybe some of the results that you found and like some references at the end. It's kind of like a visual summary of a paper that you usually submit to like a conference or a journal. So just like a visual kind of layout of whatever you presented in a research paper, for instance. So for the Julia setting, the things you can, like we've seen in the past, things like if you want to talk about a certain project you've done or like a certain package, you could also do something very similar where like you present what this package solves, what's the problem it's faced, and like some people could show like some benchmarking numbers where like they've done much better than like the other alternative that used to exist before that. And then some references or something like that. That's like the general overview of poster. But like, to be honest, I personally don't think there should be like a set in stone template for such type of things. Like if you think you have something to share and you want to share it in a like more kind of creative sense, just like go for it. Like whatever you think is a good way to present everything and say like a one page summary of whatever you've done, just like be as creative as you want. Like there's no set in stone, oh, like you have to do X, Y, and Z. So that's the traditional sense of posters. And in the past, usually we would have like a big hallway or sorry, big like room where you basically put all of your posters and people can walk around and like see the poster and like see the things written on the poster and the figures on the poster and ask questions to you. But because we don't have this exact same setting now, we thought it would be easier for people to just do the 3-minute pitch or presentation and people can ask follow-up questions based on that. Now to wrap up and actually answer the question back from the poster question. Yeah, for the experiences thing, the type of things like that I think could go in experiences is something like you've used Julia for like you're a first-time Julia user and like it showed up for you in a class, let's say, and then you found out about this really cool feature and like you want to just talk about this cool feature. Or like you participated in an event or like a hackathon or something and you used Julia and like you really did well with using Julia because it was faster than, I don't know, the other library in another language or something like that. It's more of a like experience. That's how I've experienced Julia in the past year. And there was like this cool story that I want to tell. So it's more of a story rather than like a technical contribution or something.
It's not to say that all posters have to be posters about a package. Like you could have the, I don't know, the Julia in Pig Latin sub-community, and you can like have posts talk about our Pig Latin projects, translating the manual into Pig Latin, and how we have the Pig Latin meetups. But yeah.
Yes, and one more thing, I would think of posters, especially that now we have the virtual setup, as like another opportunity to actually have a conversation regarding a topic rather than like just presenting something. So you basically have kind of a starting point to start the conversation, which is the poster, but you also have the space to have a conversation. So that's like one major kind of difference between the two. Absolutely, posters do not need to be just about packages.
There is a question, is it okay if we have something related to solar photovoltaic domain? Absolutely, yeah.
We had a half session last year that was basically about electronics and electrical and grids and batteries.
And power systems and etc. Related, how applicable does a workshop have to be for the general population? If I want to teach folks how to do something niche in my field, is that acceptable? I would recommend taking a look at the previous workshops at previous JuliaCons and getting a feel for how domain-specific they can get. We had quite domain-specific workshops about differential equations, etc. So yes, but I would also lean, like, if you're gonna give a workshop about how to do genome sequencing, that might be the wrong venue. But if you want to do bioinformatics with Julia, absolutely. There are some questions about how to learn Julia or how to see the pros and cons on working in Julia. Look at the old JuliaCon videos. That's why they're out there. They are good records of what's happening in the community, why people are excited. Come to the next JuliaCon, right? This is basically one of our intents is to highlight and to share the work of the community and to invite new people in.
Right, and there's a lot of learning material on, if you go to julialang.org/learning, I think is the website. And then there's also, we're hosting those like every month, beginner ask us anything type of events. So you can also come and ask those types of questions there. And JuliaCon, of course, like it's a place where you can find a lot of content on Julia, whether workshops or talks and other kinds of things. I saw a question on the YouTube chat, actually, which is about something was, now I can't find it again. Something about the contrast between abstracts and 6 to 8 page paper, I guess.
Right. Go to proceedings.juliacon.org, and in the upper right, there is a link to the guide, and that is for how to publish and what's the difference are. If you still have questions, probably ask in discourse, and then we will add more material to that side.
Yeah, so just a clarification here. These are somewhat two different things, but similar, right? One of them is for the conference where you come and present something at JuliaCon, and one of them is for the proceedings, which is education.
And in contrast to some scientific conferences, what we generally do is we have a broad conference about many topics, and proceedings will be people who have given a talk at JuliaCon can then submit to the proceedings after the conference if they want to expand upon their work, or if there are academics and they need in some form publications as a form of academic credit. And so then afterwards we go through a secondary review period where we work with the authors and the reviewers to make sure that their work is of high technical quality and is ready to be published in an academic sense. But that's afterwards and separate from the actual conference. And that answers also the question: is the deadline for the Julia conference and the proceedings the same? No, it isn't. The conference is March 31st, and the proceedings is, don't want to say anything wrong, but sometime in September.
I see a question on Pigeonhole, which is how are interactions with conference attendees facilitated at JuliaCon? So yeah, that's kind of interesting given that we're doing the whole thing online. So we have a few kind of formats for that. First of all, we're trying to keep the talks and anything that's like presented. All of these presentations should be recorded ahead of time, unless it's a BOF, where like in the BOF, it's the purpose of it is the discussion and not the presentation. So that's the only place we don't record. And then for talks, lightning talks, anything else that has a Q&A aspect of it, all these will be facilitated on Discord. which is not Discord, which is another platform that we're basically going to have rooms in Discord where if you're joining a session, you'll be able to ask your questions there in a verbal setting, and like it's not just chat or so. That's the main that's the main way we're going to do it. We are still looking into other ways to facilitate more kind of social interaction, even though the conference is online. We still don't have confirmed, we don't have a confirmation from the other software that we're trying to figure out for JuliaCon, but hopefully we'll announce something soon aside from Discord.
I assume this is something that would allow us to, say, stay awake till 1 a.m. talking to people socially.
Exactly. That's the point. The main premise, I guess I would say, is to try and mimic as much as possible what the real JuliaCon looks like.
I'm a big proponent of the hallway track, and without it, conference doesn't feel the same.
Yeah. So we'll see how. Hopefully, we will get the confirmation on that soon. What are some of the general reasons people aren't accepted for a talk proposal at JuliaCon? That's a good question. Does any of you want to answer?
Yep. Yeah. A big one is not filling in the actual call for paper. Like if you put in a proposal and your proposal is Julia GPU BOF. If you're someone like Valentine who submitted a proposal that is just Julia GPU BOF, you might think, oh yeah, Julia GPU, that's really well known. Everyone's going to be like, yes, I want to go that. Which is, a valid point, especially for some of the BOFs. But that tends to lose out to anyone who's put a bit more
words in.
Any more words, basically, than literally just the title. But more broadly, like not having a very good description, like having a really short description, like of just a few sentences in the abstract, like we can't know if that's good. In general, you want to make sure you fill in the whole abstract. You want to have like a paragraph or two beyond that in the description. Otherwise, the reviewers are like, I can't review this. I don't know if it's good or bad. Like, I don't know what this even is.
Right. Also,
that's the one.
Keep in mind, the abstract is something that should entice people. Basically, it's like, why do I want to go to this? Why do I want to watch this? And then the description, you can take time and actually explain what you're doing and what's happening.
Other reasons include this is just an advertisement. Like this is talking about some commercial product, and it's not suitable. A lot of talks are something like, oh, it's X software that gave a talk last year at JuliaCon, and if that's being submitted as a full talk and there's nothing that's really making it clear why it should be a full talk, because it's like, well, we heard about this last year. That often will get bumped down to either lightning talk if it's just an update or, and if it's bumped down to a lightning talk, it might not be as competitive as some of the other things there, just in terms of like being the most interesting. Other ones, not being about Julia at all. Every year we reject like a bunch where it's like, this is unclear as to if this is even about Julia. And it could be these talks are actually about Julia, but if you haven't written enough of a description for that to be clear, that tends to get bumped. Year before last, Jeff Bonanzan almost got a talk rejected where the talk was titled, What's Bad About Julia? And the reasons the reviewers disliked this was them saying, look, I just don't think that this speaker has enough experience with Julia to really understand the language. So if you're making bold claims and you don't have anything to kind of back them up, and you're not Jeff Bonanzan, then you're probably going to get poorly reviewed.
Yeah. A general note also that the reviewing is blind, generally speaking. As the program chairs, we can look behind the curtain and sometimes rescue talks like Jeff's. But generally speaking, the reviewers don't know who you are, and they shouldn't know who you are. The talk should stand on its own merits.
Yeah, to talk a bit more through the process, it normally works out that there are 3 to 5 reviewers per talk. The reviewers will go through and submit reviews. We then sort the talks by median review score. So that basically discounts that person who didn't get the talk at all and gave it a 1, and discounts that person who's like, this is amazing, gave it a 5. And you see like the middle score. And then go through, and there's at some point there'll be a cutoff where talks that scored above 3.5, they're the ones that are probably going to accept. Generally, anything scored, say, a 5, so all the reviewers were like 5 out of 5, that's the best. They'll probably be immediately accepted by the program chairs without further looking at them. Then, like going down, probably 4s, they'll check through, make sure there's nothing like funny going in the reviews, like a reviewer who shouldn't have been reviewing that because they have a conflict of interest or things like that. And then it'll get down to like the 3s and 3.5s. And at this point, the program chairs will be like making some decisions, looking at the things, being like, well, 3 and 5, this is kind of our cutoff. We don't quite have enough space to take every 3.5 talk. So we'll be looking around, seeing like, is there a good balance of talks? Like if we've got 1 million talks about dashboards and here's another talk about dashboard that's not as interesting as like the one scored better, it's more likely to be bounced. And generally, if something scores 1 or 2, it's unlikely that it's going to actually get much look in the first place because, well, there'll be hundreds of talks and carefully checking everything.
It's a lot of work and impossible.
Yep. And then after that's done, the talks we selected. People be offered lightning talks if they didn't get full talks, etc., etc. And anonymous reviews we sent to the submitters, so you can see what the viewers said. And sometimes the viewers said things a bit nonsense, but mostly the reviews are pretty good. And that can give you a chance to go through and fix something like, I saw in the abstract that you didn't explain what, I don't know, some abbreviation stood for. You can go and fix that before the conference itself.
There was a question about somebody never made a conference video before. How polished, well-made does our video have to be? Tips to make the weather better if accepted. One of the big things is make sure that you don't have too much background noise and that you have a decent microphone. Like if your laptop picks up your fan vibrations, that can ruin the experience of the talk for many people. Like generally speaking, like if your video camera is bad or your lighting is bad, just turn it off. Just talk over your slides. That's fine. But yeah, make sure that you don't record in the middle of a construction zone.
Yeah, just 2 comments on this. One comment is regarding the fan. I think I had a situation like that last year when we were suddenly having to give presentations online, and it's like, okay, one of the earliest conferences I had to do that for. And then when I finished recording, which like happened after multiple trials and was exhausting, I found out that the video had the computer fan on in the video, and it was so devastating. But then I found out that there was actually a tool to actually remove that sound. So if you are on Mac, I think iMovie actually has a feature for that, and there's other tools for it. It's just that you have to search for it and find out what's the tool to get rid of this noise. But in retrospect, after that experience happened, which was the first time I had to do this, afterwards, I just realized that like I just have to shut down everything while I'm recording a video and just have the slides and like just don't have a lot of open tabs and open apps open as you're recording. So that's one note, just more of a personal note, I guess. And then one quick thing about more related to JuliaCon, we're actually going to announce a mentorship platform for like mentorship process for people after they've been accepted. So if they want some advice from people who have given talks in the past, or they just want to kind of some sort of mentorship on how to give talks for first-time speakers, that process will be available for everyone who was selected. So just keep that in mind.
Other things to be, I guess, aware of, the video. So the video will be due probably a week or two before the conference. So that'll be after you've been accepted, after you've got feedback from your viewers, all that stuff. And what things to do with making a video. So you can record all your drafts. You don't have drafts, just keep recording it until you've got the version you're happy with. But then when you do upload your talk, make sure you upload the correct one and not one of your drafts like I did.
Yeah, also try to do your recording not while you're being jet lagged.
I love how we're examples of failures. Like, these are all the mistakes we've done.
Yeah, don't do it last minute. Don't do it after you haven't slept for a while.
Don't upload till you know you're happy. Since the software may or may not allow you to correct it after the fact.
Yeah, actually, we're going to have a very strict deadline on submitting those talks, because like the whole organizing aspect of things will not be super kind of fun. So we will have a strict deadline on when you want to upload those videos, and having to replace a video at the very last minute is not going to be so great from an organizing point of view. So we will probably just be very strict on the deadline to submit those videos.
The other thing is the video will be going to like a professional video editor who won't be doing like a lot. They won't be like touching up the lighting for you, but they will be like cutting out the like 5 seconds of you playing with the microphone at the start and at the end, and adding like the JuliaCon logo to the start and all that, I believe. Is this correct?
I imagine that's the case, yes.
A lightly edited video is okay, or is it preferred to have a simple presentation style video? Lightly edited is fine.
Mm-hmm. Actually, this is one hack that one of my colleagues used to do videos. Was he just couldn't get the video out. He just couldn't read it correctly in the whole time. So he recorded it like in 5-minute blocks and then stitched them together after the fact. It's fine.
Yeah. Or for people who are like me and need live audience pressure in order to actually make sense, and not ramble on one topic for 10 minutes. You can also just record yourself talking on Zoom to a friend.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, from also like more of a personal experience as well. Just don't stop when something not perfect goes on in your presentation. So like if you just made a mistake and you immediately notice you made a mistake, feel free to just correct it on the spot and say, oh no, like I meant X instead of Y. You don't have to stop recording and restart again. So it doesn't have to be perfect in that sense. There's just because like I think we have about 10 minutes left. I just want to go through the some of the questions that are relevant. One of the questions was, what is the acceptance rate for talk proposals? I don't think we've ever release that type of information, correct, Lyndon and Valentin?
Yeah, it's actually really annoying for us to compute because of the fact that a lot of talks will be like, well, we didn't accept the talk, but we accepted as a lightning talk, or we didn't accept the talk, but hey, there's a poster. It's quite common for talks that are not a bit borderline to be offered posters, and whether or not the presenters choose to present those is up to them. I think in general, my feeling is it's around 50%, a little bit below 50%.
That feels about right.
Yeah. I think it's probably going down every year. Every year we get more submissions than last, and the conference doesn't get much larger, although we have been adding tracks. I don't think we'll be adding more tracks this year. I think we reached the number of tracks that we could reasonably hold. Hard to know online, though.
There's a question on, would it be helpful to suggest topics we'd like to see? Honestly, yeah, I think if you have suggestions on topics you'd like to see, I don't know what's the best way to kind of publicize this information, but maybe
I would actually do the opposite. If there is a talk you would like to see, give that talk.
But what if the person has a list of these talks and
well, then they need to submit a list of talks. But it's much like it's. I think many people know what they're gonna give their talk about. So especially like within the next 2 weeks, you won't find anybody who just goes like, "Oh yeah, I really should give a talk about this."
So I agree with the sentiment, Valentin. I think it's just it's an interesting kind of flip the perspective on talks versus audience. Now you're actually it's actually interesting to kind of like survey or ask the audience what they'd like to see from an organizing point of view, right? So I think that's actually like I see the sentiment and it's correct. Like if you want to see a talk, give the talk. That's great. But it's interesting to see what the people are interested in seeing. We don't promise anything, obviously, but it's interesting to know.
So I've been involved in organizing conventions prior to organizing JuliaCon, and it's interesting that conventions are actually the opposite. So we have a push model. The presenter pushes ideas up to the convention, up to the committee, the program committee, and says, "I want to give this." In contrast, like conventions are often the opposite, where ideas will be put forward to committee, and then they'll seek out someone and say, "Hey, you know a lot about this. Why don't you give a talk about it?" Which is a pull model. So JuliaCon is a push model where things come from the presenter. So I definitely like the idea that it would be helpful to suggest topics you'd like to see. Kind of makes sense, but in practice, it's not how it runs. If you do something like that, better is if you can be like, "Oh, I really want to talk about X." What if I like poke the presenter of person who knows a lot about X to be like, "Hey, I used to meet to talk about X. I would appreciate that," and that can like encourage that person to get over the line and present. I think I made Valentin talk about cassette a few years ago.
That's awesome. I think that could be a great kind of resolution for this. If you want to go through the authors of
the other thing is for workshops, there is a bit more of this aspect. In the workshops are a little bit more solicited and a little bit more curated by the program committee.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I was this person who asked this question. So if you do have suggestions, like we don't promise anything, I think just go ahead and post them on the YouTube. Like I think there's no problem in sharing your opinion on that. There's just no platform or like a fixed, robust way to do this.
Make a discourse post.
Discourse post on the Slack JuliaCon channel if you want to share your opinions on that. Like again, no promises, but it might be useful to people for people to see it.
We have quite a few new questions. Will there be what's new in Julia in the last year talk? If there has historically been such a talk, and if we can wrangle the responding people to give one again, then yes, we will try to have so. Yeah.
There'll be a state of the Julia.
State of the Julia, state of PKG, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's traditionally something that's happened in the past, so I expect that to happen as well this year.
Yeah, we have to invite these people to give their talks. Proposals are submitted by March 29th, 31st, but the videos have to be recorded later. Yes, so the video recording has only to happen after your proposal got accepted.
Correct.
If you have a Java dependency and you don't know how to handle that, no worries. That might actually be like a good question to ask during the conference.
Approximately how many proposals have been submitted in previous years?
Approximately 250 in 2020, is that right? About 270 in 2050, I think.
Yeah, 2017, 18 might have been 300, 350. It varies.
For some reason.
But that was also on a different platform, but yeah. 2020
was 255 proposals from 202 people. And in the end, 150 people spoke, and there were 166 sessions. I think that may be including posters.
Yep. And sponsor talks and everything else.
2019 was 207 proposals from 187 submitters, 147 people spoke, and 156 sessions.
Is it okay if we just use existing packages to solve the problem of any specific domain? That might be a good thing for the experiences track.
Or if it's longer and you have something more in depth to say, like this is how I took some, I don't know, signal processing package and then applied it to biosequencing data. And because of this cool feature of how it composes with this other package, I didn't actually write any code at all. Like that could be a cool like talk or lightning talk. It's like just stacking on random packages to accomplish tasks they weren't prepared for. I think it's a harder submission, like to get through, but if you can tell a really good story about it, I think it'll be a really good talk.
Yeah.
There's a question on for BOFs. Do we have to give an estimate as the size of the sub community we think will show up? How are those reviewed, evaluated? I think, like, honestly, sometimes you can't actually have those numbers. It's hard to have those numbers. If you have the numbers, I think it would be great to share them. But if you don't have the numbers, what's more important to share is why such type of conversation is important, why such type of community meeting and having those conversations is important for the conference, the community in general, and the sub-community. So I think I would value the reasons more, even though the community might not necessarily be that big. I don't know what your
in general, BOFs, in contrast to talks, are something that are more likely to have the program committee interfere with and override reviewers, etc. Just because in this case we have so few of them, because they are an hour long. You get X, like what, 8 of them in the conference, 16 of them in the conference. And while for a talk, it's fine if we have 3 different dashboard talks. It's not so good if we have like 3 different BOFs about dashboards. And because the program committee are part of the Julia community, like they're going to be aware of how big things are, or they're going to reach out to people and find out about these things. I would not worry about size.
Yeah, I also remember like it's like if 2 people say submitted BOFs on the same similar community, I think it's possible that we ask them to combine their efforts, for instance.
Exactly.
The thing I would go for with BOFs is like a really strong BOF has something about the outcomes. So if if you can say in your BOF, oh, the outcome of this BOF is we're going to have a meeting and we're going to talk about how we're going to replace jump with convex.jl, and this is important for the community. Or like we're going to have a meeting and it's going to be about how we're going to redo the foundations of HTTP.jl. And the outcome of this will be a 1-year plan of work. That makes like a really strong submission. Like it's still a good submission if you're like, oh, we're just going to all share our ideas about how we've used cassette in the past, or something like that. Or we'd like to collect data of this BOF about current ongoing difficulties in parallelism. But yeah.
After having my GPU BOF be rejected last year, I just decided a counter program, and I'm now hosting a bi-weekly call on this topic. And similarly, the HPC BOFs in the last years are now virtual monthly events. So if you just want to get your community together, you might not actually need a BOF. It might be a good kickstarting event, but then think about how do you keep the community working together and sharing ideas throughout the year, so that it's not just a once-a-year thing happening.
So we're almost at time to end. So I don't know if there's any quick questions you can, there's one that's saved for last. But I want to see if there's anything else that's.
How much information should be given for municipality proposals?
A lot.
Yeah. If you have speakers.
Mini symposiums are the hardest thing to get accepted because they're so long that, like, when reviewing this, you need to say, this seems really good, but is it so good that we're going to reject like 4 talks so that we have time for this. So yeah, if you have speakers, like definitely list your speakers. If you have like exciting, cool, like we've organized this special thing, like a panel discussion with the speakers, like, yeah. Mini symposiums are very hard to get accepted. I would not submit them unless you already like had a very clear idea in your mind of like, I would like to run a tiny quarter-day long conference.
Yeah, I like the phrasing of mini symposium as a conference within a conference. So remember that, like it's you're organizing a conference within a conference. Okay, so I think we are at time, and just to stick to our schedule, maybe we can do the last question, which is the save for last, and then wrap it up. Does any of you want to answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, I have an answer. The question is, what is your favorite thing about JuliaCon? For me, the two things that I really enjoy is, and also why I'm organizing, is first I see all of the users and community members and my friends meeting up, and the second thing is it reminds me about the breadth and the talent in the community. And so I learn a lot about what different people are working on and what problems they're running into. And it helps me like get out of my little corner that I spend most of my day thinking about, and reminds me why I'm doing this work.
I'd agree with that. It's about like definitely seeing people. Like it's an unreal feeling to go to a conference where well, used to be you knew everyone, but now it's still a quarter of the people there. It's great to like actually see people in person, or in this case online. It's still, I think we do lose something of that aspect, but we keep it better than I thought. Then the other thing would be someone watching your talk and then being like, oh, there's just a massively better way to do this, which Valentine did to me a few conferences ago. It was like, oh, that thing you're doing, like actually if you access the compiler internals and rewrite like half your code, you can do this much faster, which is like getting that outside information.
Yeah, honestly, very similar. The personal component of things of JuliaCon is a huge factor for me. It's like a reunion with some of your favorite people every year. Like it's awesome. So there's that, and obviously there's like sometimes like Julia is a very like quickly evolving language in general. So like sometimes you just like things happen so fast and you don't get to try a certain specific feature or like something specific. And I feel like JuliaCon is like the best place to just kind of have like an update on your information about like your knowledge about Julia, and just kind of have a make sure you're up to date. Like when you go to JuliaCon, I feel like I come back feeling like, okay, I feel like I'm updated about Julia 100% now. And also like come up with better ideas of doing certain things you were doing in the past, or just kind of refreshing on a project you've been working on like throughout the year. And then you're like, oh, that fixes my problem that I was having a couple months ago, and now I can solve it and stuff like that. So it does help a lot in that sense. So yeah. And well, one last thing, as I'm saying this, like just when you go to JuliaCon and you suddenly feel like you're finally like up to date with Julia, I think props goes to previous people who organized the conference, like Lyndon and Valentine, who made sure that the conference was actually very like informative, and like the quality of the talks were amazing and the speakers were amazing, and that just hats off to both of you and everyone who has worked on previous JuliaCons. I know it's a very hard job to do. So thank you.
Thank you. And Huda, thank you for all of the work you're doing this year. It's very safe hands.
Thank you. Anyway, I think with that, it's time to wrap up. Thanks for both of you for like devoting 1 hour of your time to answer all those questions, or even more than 1 hour. And Logan, I know you're not on the channel or on video, but also I know you're there. So thank you for also organizing and hosting all the logistics related to this event. And thanks everyone for showing up, watching, asking questions. This was a lot of fun. I hope it was helpful and useful for all of you. If there's more questions, feel free to keep asking them in the JuliaCon channel on Slack or possibly Discourse. And with that, thanks everyone for joining. See you soon. Bye. See you at JuliaCon.
See you at JuliaCon.
Yeah, bye.
Is it